Hello and welcome to week 3 of Math Club. Oh my goodness, you guys are getting ever closer to taking that Math 1 placement test. So proud of all the work you put in and I hope you're doing that extra practice on the site. Here's our warm up. I want you to pause the video and try these too. Go for it. All right, so for the first one, I got x equals negative 43, and for the second, I got x equals negative 52 over 37. Super gross numbers, but that's all right. Let's show how we do the first one. We want to cross multiply here because that's going to be the easiest way for us to solve this rational expression on both sides. On the left-hand side, we get 4 times x plus 7 equals 3 times x minus 5. And so this will get us 4x plus 28 equals, and then 3x minus 15. From here, I say, well, where do I have more x's? On the left-hand side. So we're going to subtract 3x from both sides. And that gets us x plus 28 equals negative 15. And then now we need to undo adding 28. So we're going to subtract 28 from both sides. And this gives me x equals negative 43. For the second one, we cross multiply again. And this gives us 8 times 2x minus 3 equals 7 times negative 3x plus 24, or sorry, plus 4, which is 16x minus 24 equals negative 21x plus 28. From here, I would say, well, where do I have more x's? Again, it's on the left. Oh my goodness. So we're going to add 21x to both sides to reduce that negative 21x. This gives me a 37x minus 24 equals 28. Now we add 24 to both sides because adding 24 will be the inverse operation of subtracting 24, and that is a 24, not a negative 2.4. This gives me 37x equals 52, and then we divide by the 37. Oh no! I'm getting a positive answer here. Well, instead of re-recording all of that, I'm going to just change this to a positive 32 or positive 52 over 37. All right, sorry for folks who watched in and got that same answer, just a positive instead of a negative. Hey, let's try a couple more literal equations. I want to see if there's one more hiding down here. So I'm going to give you a couple minutes to try these two out. For all three of these, we're going to be solving for x. So we have b equals 5x minus w, p equals 2x plus 2w, and m equals 7w plus 5 over x. So try these three problems out, pause the video here, and just give yourself a little bit more practice on literal equations. All right, for the first one, I got x equals v plus w over 5. For the second one, I got x equals p over 2 minus w. You might have also gotten p minus 2w over 2 equals x, and that's the same thing. I just simplified down, so if you got that answer, we're talking about the same thing. And then for the last one, I got 7w plus 5 over m. Interesting. Let's go over them. If you already solved these correctly, you can fast forward. If not, watch the explanation. So the first thing we need to do on here is we want to not isolate x because we can't do that yet. Let's isolate the 5x. So we're going to add w to both sides. And this gets me v plus w equals 5x. Now we're going to undo multiplication of 5 and x. To undo multiplication, we divide. And we can't really simplify that down. If you want to do v over 5 plus w over 5 equals x, that's also fine. They mean the same thing. I just like to keep it all in one numerator because nothing simplifies out, right? So in the second one, we had the 2's would simplify out, so that's why I split it up. But here we're solving for x again, so we're going to first have to subtract 2w from both sides. So we get p minus 2w equals 2x. And then again, we want to undo dividing or multiplying by 2. So we divide by 2 and get either one of these two answers. The third one's a little bit trickier. Here we have an x in the denominator. We can't have an x in the denominator, we need it in the numerator. So we're going to multiply the top and bottom, or essentially we're going to multiply both sides by x to get that x out of the denominator. On the right-hand side, x over x becomes 1, so we're left with 7w plus 5. And on the right-hand side, we have x times m. Well, I don't want x times m, I just want x. So we're going to divide by m and get x equals 7w plus 5 over m. And there we go. So let's talk about some word problems. And with this, we kind of need some background information on just geometry in general. And so let's start by talking about perimeter. How can we figure out the perimeter of a rectangle? The easiest way we could do this is by drawing a shape and calling length, length, width, and width. So some of you might say width plus length plus length. And if we want to just use general definitions of geometry, this would be helpful because maybe we're not dealing with a rectangle, but instead dealing with a quadrilateral. So all the side lengths would be different, or we're not. This is a rectangle, and two of the side lengths are the same. So we might want to condense this down into 2w plus 2l. Or if you realize they have that common factor of 2, factor the 2 out and go the length plus the width times 2. Either one of those are fine. A square is a square partially because of all four sides being congruent. We could just say 4s, where s is the length, or essentially s is the side length. The other part is that a square has 4 right angles, right? Otherwise, it could be a rhombus. And for a triangle, well, this kind of gets back to add up all your sides. Now, we're not trying to say use Pythagorean theorem if it's a right triangle to figure out each length, or even isosceles where 2 of the legs are equal. We're just saying the perimeter of a triangle in general. The last thing we want to talk about is the interior angle sum of a triangle. So what we mean is, if we were to take all 3 of these angles and add them up, what would they be equal to? And the answer is 180 degrees. So you're going to see specifically us talking about this and perimeter of a rectangle later on in the lesson. So make sure you kind of keep those in mind as we move forward. Let's also talk about lists of integers or consecutive integers. Consecutive means in a row. When we're talking about consecutive, we mean run right after the other. We also have to say integers here because we can't say just numbers, because I could say, well, consecutive numbers, what does that even mean? Right? Is like 2.2 and 2.3 consecutive? Well, technically you could do 2.2 and 2.201 or 001 or 0001. Too many zeros. So we want to say consecutive integers to talk about whole numbers, and it could be negative, but a lot of these problems deal with positive numbers. So if we wanted to write 3 consecutive integers, and we want to say n is the first number in the list, then if we're talking about consecutive integers, the first one's n, the second one's n plus 1, and the third one's n plus 2. Now, some people get kind of crafty here, and they say, well, what if I don't want the first integer to be n? What if I take the middle integer to be n? And then that means that the largest integer would be n plus 1, but the smallest would be n minus 1. This is nice because if we're trying to add these up, all of these add up into 3n. And that's really helpful when solving some of these problems. Whereas if we were to try to sum these up, we would get 3n plus 3. So doing that plus 1 minus 1 sometimes kind of pays off for us. But you have to remember that n's your middle number and not your smallest. What about 3 consecutive integers? Well, we could think about writing out some integers, right? Just some of the smallest ones. And starting to notice a pattern. So 2, 4, 6, 8, oh, I forgot 9, and 10. These are exactly 2 spaces apart every single time. So for a consecutive even, we could say n plus 2, and n plus 4. But again, it's 2 away from this one, so we have to add that additional 2. Again, we talked about how some people might be a little bit cheeky with it. They might do n plus 2, and n minus 2. And that also works. The other one we might want to talk about are consecutive odd integers. Now, if we notice, consecutive odd integers have the exact same spacing as consecutive even integers. In fact, they're exactly 2 away. So anytime you see consecutive odd or even, all you have to do is switch it from n plus 1, and n plus 2 to n plus 2, n plus 4, because odd and even integers are 2 away from themselves. I want to see if you guys can try these first 2 problems out. We have 3 here, but I want to see if you can try these first 2 problems out. So pause the video and thinking about what we just talked about, see if you can do these. All right, so for the first one, I got the largest integer being 25. And for the second one, I got 36. Let's talk about how I could do this. Here, this is talking about consecutive integers, not even or odd, just consecutive integers. And we want the sum, which means we're going to add them up. And there's 3 of them. So we're going to start with n plus 1 plus n plus 2. And they sum up to 72. This gives us 3n plus 3 equals 72. Subtract the 3 from both sides, and we get 3n equals 69. Divide by 3, and this gives us n is 23. So now we go back and ask ourselves, what is this question asking? Well, it wants the largest of the integers. So this is the smallest one. So this is 23, 24. The largest would be 25. Now, if we want to do it the other way that we talked about, where you make n the middle integer, then what you could do is say, well, technically, if it's n minus 1 plus n plus 1 equals 72, then 3n equals 72. And now all we have to do is divide by 3 to get n is 24. Because again, remember, n is this middle integer. And so the largest would be one more at 25. So 2 different ways we can try that one out. Here's our second one. Samia has 3 consecutive even integers that sum to 108. So again, we're summing. So we're going to do n plus 2 plus n plus 4 sums up to 108. This gives us 3n plus 6 equals 108. So that means subtract 6 from both sides, 3n equals 102. And n is 34. But again, in this case, 34 is the smallest. We want the middle, which would be 2 higher than that, or 36. The other way we could have set this up was making it n minus 2 plus n plus 2 equals 108. And then this gets us 3n equals 108. And therefore, n is 36. And because I asked for the middle integer, we can just take our answer. All right, for this final one, I want you to try this one out again. Try this on your own, pause the video, and come back when you're done. So in this problem, it starts off with saying Aiden baked some cookies. For some reason, Aiden has no idea how many cookies he baked. But we know that he kept half. And so essentially what we can say is, well, if Aiden had X cookies and he kept half, we're left with half. So we're left with X over 2. And with the remaining, he gave 4 cookies to each of his 5 friends. So we're going to subtract away 4 times 5, because we're told that he has 7 left. So if we take half the cookies that he started with and subtract 4 times 5, 4 cookies for each of his 5 friends. We're left with 7. So x over 2 minus 20 is 7. This is going to give us x over 2 equals 27. And therefore x is 54, which is our answer. And there you go. There's a couple other ways we could have done that one, but I think that one's probably the most straightforward. These two problems are a little bit challenging, so buckle up, folks. We're talking about the perimeter of a rectangle, and we know that the perimeter is twice the width plus twice the length is equal to 50. We're also told that the width of a rectangle is 4 more than twice the length. So we're going to replace this, our width, with 2L plus 4. So all we're doing here is we're saying, hey, the width is 2L plus 4. Let's replace it. This gives me 4L plus 8 plus 2L equals 50. And so 6L plus 8 equals 50. This means 6L is equal to 42, or the length is 7. But it's not asking for the length, it's asking for the width. So we have to plug that back in and figure out what our width is. 2 times 7 plus 4 is 14 plus 4, which is 18. And we can check to see if that makes sense. Is 18, 18, 7, and 7? Does that add up to 50? It does. Our width is 18 inches. We might hit this kind of problem again back when we talk about systems, but it's still one that we could probably do with a little bit of help. The second one is talking about angle sums. So we know that the angle sum of a triangle is 180. I'm going to label this first angle, second angle, third angle. But regardless, all three of these are going to add up to 180. The triangle's second angle is twice the first, and the third angle is 2 less than half the first. Well, I don't even know what the first angle is, so I'm going to throw a variable at that, right? If I don't know, I'm going to put an x with it. The second angle is twice the first. Okay, well, that means that this one has to be 2x. If the first angle is x, the second one has to be 2x. The third angle is 2 less than, so we're going to subtract 2, half the first. So we're going to have to do 1/2 x. From here, we're going to take the sum of all of these and figure out the measure. So 2x plus x plus 1/2 x minus 2. So this gives me 3.5. I'm going to make that 7 over 2x. You could also write this as 3.5x if you're more comfortable with that. But 7/2 x minus 2 is 180. And so I can add 2 to both sides. And that gives me 7/2 x equals not 180, but 182. And so now we're going to multiply by the reciprocal. So we're going to multiply both sides by the reciprocal. And the reciprocal of 7/2 is 2/7. So 182 times 2/7 tells us x is 52. So this first angle is 52. The second angle is 104. And this third angle would be 52 divided by 2 minus 2, which is 24. If we check, these all add up to 180, so we know that we did it right. Two last questions before we go. One dealing with angles, the other dealing with sides. I think I can kind of squeeze them both in. Pause the video and try these out. All right, for this first one, we get the first angle is 68, the second is 72 or 78, and the third is 34. For the perimeter, we get the width is 23 and the length is 15. If you got both of these, great job, you're done. If not, stick around and watch the explanation. So for the first one, we're told again that the first angle is twice as big as the third, but we're not told what the third is. The second angle also references the third, so we're going to have to just call the third angle x. The first angle is 2 times the third, and the second angle is 10 more than 2 times the third, so 2x plus 10. We add these all up to get 5x plus 10 equals 180. So now this gets us 5x equals 170, and we divide by 5 both sides to get x is 34. But that's just the third angle. So we plug those in and solve to get the other two. For the second one, we're doing perimeter. This time we're told, so perimeter, so 2w plus 2l is 76. Here we're told the length is 8 less than the width. So the length is 8 less than the width. Length, width minus 8. We're going to plug that in. 2w plus 2 times w minus 8 equals 76. If you struggle with the plugging it back in, this is what I'd suggest doing. Essentially go length, length, width, width. And then now, because you know that the width is w minus 8, replace it with w minus 8. And this might help you out to see that we would essentially get 4w minus 16 equals 76. We add 16 to both sides, and this gets us 4w is 92. Divide by 4, divide by 4, and we get the width is 23. But we also need to know the length. And so if the width is 23, which I have as 2w, 23, then we have to essentially take 23 minus 8, which is 15. And there you go. All right, if you have any other questions about word problems, feel free to reach out. Otherwise, have a great day. Bye.